I didn't go to university,
Okay.
no. I didn't go not because I wasn't clever enough, but because I just knew, I was tired actually of school, and I just knew that I would spend some time, I've always said this, I've said this literally from since I was young, that I'd mostly spend 2 weeks working and 6 weeks playing. And I did not want to come out of university with a 3. I didn't want to spend 3 years working and know that I may not have given it my all, because I recognise how my brain works, and I've been watching how my brain works, funnily enough, and just recognising, I need a certain amount of processing time. I need time to work it out, and I will procrastinate until I have worked it out. And so I went straight into the world of work. I think the most important thing for us is to spend time with ourselves. First, you've got to get to know who you are in order for you to choose what you... And I just believe that so many of us haven't been allowed to be who we are. We've been conditioned, it's a word you used earlier, we've been conditioned to operate on other people's terms, to make everybody else feel comfortable whilst we may be uncomfortable. I can speak openly, and last year I went through burnout, and I realised I didn't even recognise it, but I put myself in counselling, and I recognised there was a level of anxiety that I was living with, and it was my counsellor who made me say, it's anxiety, and I was almost like, I don't want to say that. And what I recognised was the reason why is because sometimes I wasn't speaking my own truths. I'm not talking about what I say on social media, just in my life, and in not speaking my own truths, I was pushing down what I really wanted to say, and in doing that, creating a level of anxiety. And so when we aren't authentically ourselves in situations because we're avoiding conflict, or we don't want people to think as being a particular way, we are pushing down who we really are, and sooner or later that shows up in the body. So for me, it's not about, I need to be big and brash. It's about spending time with yourself to work out, who am I? What do I really like? What do I enjoy? It's not about whether you're being aggressive or non-conformist. It's about you getting to know who you are. I like to call it aligning with yourself. We have been given so many different layers of other people's other people's stuff. We often don't even know who we are, and so actually we're showing up in the workplace not even as ourselves. What motivates me? Light bulb moments. I love it when the light bulb goes on, they see their own brilliance, they see their own magnificence, they see their greatness, they see what they've done, how they've done it, and that means something, and they can use that to go further. I like it when I like to see people light up because they've connected with who they really are. They've aligned to themselves.
Hello everyone, and welcome to this week's episode of Against All Odds. My name is Daniel Coker, your accidental podcaster, and in our studio today is Madeline McQueen. Madeline is the director of a personal development company, Q Squared Limited, and she's somebody who is very well recognized, and she has an amazing story. And Madeline, welcome to Against All Odds.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it. That's great.
For the benefit of those who might not have come across you before, do you just mind introducing yourself a little bit more?
Yeah.
I'd like to ask a big favour. Your subscription means a lot to us because the bigger this platform gets, the bigger the guests get. So do me a favour, please click on the subscribe button and the bell notification so that you don't miss out on any future episodes. Now let's get back to this episode.
I run a personal development company with David, personal professional development company with David McQueen, who's my husband, called Q-Square Limited. I also am the director of a personal development company called Magnificently You Limited. And if you're wondering why there are two, I've been working with my husband for a very long time, and as much as we still do things together, we still have corporate gigs that we do together, there are things that I want to do differently, and so I kind of have segued off into my own company. And basically my work is about working with women in leadership, multi-six-figure women, and definitely helping them to get the clarity, build their confidence, and be empowered to live a life that thrives. I'm very much about people living their lives on their own terms. And I feel that it's so important that we work on our personal development, because that's the thing that helps us leverage our professional credentials, and that's why I do the work that I do. I love seeing people have light bulb moments where they see themselves and align with who they really are, not who they've been
conditioned to be.
Love that. Conditioned to be. I am as my husband would say, he would say I'm the husband of one, I am the wife of one. David and I have been together, coming up for this year, we'll have been married for 29 years, together for 36. Okay. We have 2 children, so daughters, my girls, I'm very proud of them, Rihanna and Lauren, who are 22 and 26. We live in Aylesbury, we recently moved out, and I am the youngest of 6 girls, born to Caribbean parents in Leicester, so I'm half Bayesian, so from Barbados, and half Antiguan. So yes. Oh wow. From Antigua.
Okay.
So, yeah.
So what did you study at university?
I didn't go.
You didn't go?
You clearly didn't read my latest blog. I didn't go to university, no. And I didn't go not because I wasn't clever enough, but because I just knew, I was tired actually of school, and I just knew that I would spend some time. I've always said this. I've said this literally from since I was young, that I'd mostly spend 2 weeks working and 6 weeks playing, and I did not want to come out of university with a 3. I don't want to spend 3 years working and know that I may not have given it my all. And I recognise some of that actually now, and this year I'm definitely going to get tested, is that I think there's a level of neurodiversity. I think we're all on the spectrum in some respects. And it makes me go, because I recognise how my brain works. And I've been watching how my brain works, funnily enough. And just recognising, I need a certain amount of processing time. I need time to work it out, and I will procrastinate until I have worked it out. And I didn't know that about myself. I couldn't be so succinct about it at that time, but I just knew that for me, I don't think I can do another 3 years, and I want to come out with my best. I don't think I can. And so I went straight into the world of work. I started working in customer service for an insurance company in Leicester, which is where I was born. And again, my brain has always been, this isn't the best way to do this, or I think we need to do it this way, which got me in trouble back in the early 80s, the late 80s, recognising that being the black person in the room, and not even really recognising that, to be fair, at times. And that was because I grew up Seventh-day Adventist, and so every Saturday I was at church with people who looked like me, and then I might be at church on a Sunday doing Pathfinders and more practical things, or back on a Wednesday for prayer meetings. So I was always surrounded with people who looked like me, doing amazing things, or doing things like being doctors and nurses and running their own businesses, working in government. And it was like, that was my experience growing up. So I never saw myself as anything else. But yeah, so I didn't, all that to say, I didn't go to university, but I've been a lifelong learner.
Wow. So it just goes to support what we're trying to do on this podcast, against all odds.
Yeah.
Because somebody of your impact and profile, and the spaces that you occupy and the clients that you work with, you would have thought that you'd need that credential, effective investee, some sort of invest education. But then you've more than made up for it by, practical learning, as you've said. What was it like growing up in your family as the last of 6 children?
My father used to say that we were, or people used to call us the Amazon, like the Amazon kids. My father was very much about us being strong and independent. I remember going home from school. I think all of my sisters experienced this and saying, if somebody hit you, he's like, you have hands, We were never to be trodden down on. We were always to stand in our own power. And I think that's definitely been something that's helped me through my life. And also having 5 other sisters, all doing things, all having opinions, also impacts you. My mother was very strong-minded, very independent. So my dad died when I was 10, so I would have been 10, my elder sister would have been 20, and everyone else would have been in between. And, my mum was very much, you all need to be independent, you need to know how to do things. She was very much, she had a lawyer on retainer, and I now live with a lawyer on retainer. But if you think about that in like the 70s and 80s, having a lawyer on retainer as a black woman, it's pretty deep. And she was a nomad, don't mess with me, don't mess with my children. I might mess with my children, but don't mess with my children. And so growing up, and again, having that background of every weekend being around people who looked like me, it was very grounding. And and I said this recently for Black Inclusion Week when I was on a panel I was on, is that it's not that you didn't get impacted. I went to a predominantly white school, and it's not that you don't get the microaggressions, the macroaggressions, the racism. It's that because you know the truth of it, because you see it every week, and you live it in your own family, then what happens is you end up with a bit of it's a bit like the boy in the bubble. It's a bit like the ready Brett glow. It's a bit of protection. So some things will bounce off, some things will dig deeper, but in general, because you already know, because you're grounded in the recognition that people who look like you have value, it doesn't hit in the same way. Again, it doesn't mean I don't get angry, it didn't mean I didn't get frustrated, but also then having somebody to advocate for me, like my mum. So I remember a particular situation where my religious studies teacher, she had, in front of the class, taken my homework and said, your writing's terrible, just like the rest of your sisters. And I was not happy, and I told one of my sisters, and she told my mum, and my mum was like, I'm done. So she can take an A4 piece of paper. I can now do, I used to do this for my children, A4 piece of paper, she'd write the letter, and then what she would do, and then maybe not even A4, she'd do it on writing paper, and then she'd turn it into its own envelope and write the name on the front. So you had to work out how to open the cuss, basically. And my mum wrote to the head teacher, because I was the youngest, so 5 children had already been through this school. And when I went back into that RE session, my teacher had to apologise to me in front of the class. And I can tell you that does something for a child when you know that there are people who are going to go to bat for you, that you're not I might be in here every day and it's me, but knowing that that you have a parent or even siblings that will go to bat for you, it makes such a difference to your experience. And so that's why I say I've always been around powerful women. There's always been and it was like, don't mess with the Chamber Sisters. That's my maiden name. Don't mess with the Chamber Sisters. And we'd take a man down, And so that's my upbringing. And my father, before he died, we had our own home. own 5-bedroom home in Leicester, and then on top of that we were a 2-car family. We were super middle class in that respect, and then we also had other properties, and my dad was on a mission to ensure that each of us had our own property. And my dad was, back in the day, he was doing Amway, he ran his own business as a garage. So there's a lot that even though he left for me so early in my life, but there was a lot that was instilled in that from my parents, and then from my sisters, and then just the wider black community. There were people who in the community, again, property, we had a thing called partner is where everybody would put their money in, and then when people needed it they could take out more. It was like a loan system, which meant that they could buy their house. Most of the people I went to church with all had their own homes. That's what I grew up with, and that really instilled in me this sense of pride, this sense of really kind of accepting who I was. And we used to call them West Indian nights, and that would be, again, at church, about talking about the culture and plays and poetry and songs. That was my upbringing, and that was very, very grounding, when every day I went to school, 5 days of a week, in a predominantly white environment, but sometimes was hostile.
At what stage then did you decide that you could possibly see yourself going on an entrepreneurial route?
So I never knew what I wanted to do. I was one of those people, and I think there's a lot of people who don't know. I think there's a lot of people as adults who don't know what they want to do too. And I think it's maybe a little bit, an unrealistic expectation. We can all have portfolio careers. So what happened was, in all honesty, I had a miscarriage. I left work and I thought, what am I going to do? I need to be around. I had 2 children and I wanted to make money in my own right. David had already left and started his own business, and I was just like, okay, let's do it for ourselves. I went through so much stress around my oldest daughter when she was little, when she was born, and having to, going back to work, and then, when she was sick, kind of like, why is your daughter sick again? All of that. And that was when I said, one, I want to be around for my children. I want to be around for school. I want to be around so that I know what's going on with them in school. And my mother worked nights, so it meant that during the day, although she slept during the day, it meant she was there when I came home from school. That was really important to me. I remember waiting mornings before I went to school to see if she'd come home before, sometimes just so that she could take me to school. But anyway, and so for me, that time was like, I want us to do something that's for us, that's our own, where I'm not under the cosh of an employer who's telling me what I can and cannot do, especially when it comes to my children. That I want to be there for whatever plays, my children did it all, all of those things. Sports day, I never want them to look and be the one going, where's my parent? And I thought it was crucial that I was around. The only way to do that was by running my own business. That's when I knew. And what are some of the challenges that you've come across in your personal development journey with women? Because I know you sort of focus on women, that you'd say, reflect a change in how things are these days relative to, back in the days, probably when you're growing up, where you had a traditional, women were kind of sort of more mothers, stay-at-home mums and all that. But in the current, environment, women are found in the workplaces. They're having to balance a career, having to balance a family life. What is the lived experience that you've come across of such people that somebody who's watching this can learn from? I mean, to be fair, growing up, most of the women I knew didn't stay home. They worked. They were in nursing or other different things, which meant that they were working shift work, and they were still balancing it. I think that there is a cultural a difference, maybe an intersectionality where it comes to women, about the women who were working, the women who weren't working. I think black women especially were working. In general, mainly most black women weren't stay-at-home mums. They might have wanted to because they couldn't afford to, and even if they could, then they were pursuing a something. I think that you'll find, and again, I think we have to also be careful sometimes of going only this one and only that one and only the other. But I think the real issue is if you had a husband who could pay for everything, then that agreement about staying at home would be there, certainly for, I think, definitely for Caucasian women. I think even Asian women may have had that particular I'll say privilege, but I'm putting it in exclamation marks, because actually sometimes it wasn't necessarily so much a privilege as necessity, and actually sometimes it was suppression as well. So it's not a holy grail. I think that's really important to say. I think what we've had and what we've pushed is in the need for women to have equality and equity and inclusion, is that we've pushed that you can do it all. And so what's happened is we are doing these big roles, but we've still got responsibility for the traditional roles. And that's not always the case for your partner, your husband. And sometimes there is no partner or husband. That's a lot of work to do. You have to keep on top of the challenges, and my God, there are a lot of challenges in work. Then if you've got children in school, there's the getting them to school, getting them from school. There's all the things that school asks for, and they ask for a lot of stuff, that you've got to make sure that that's provided for. Then there is the household requirements, there's the paying of the bills, there's the booking of the holiday if you're going to do one. There are so many tasks that women are doing. And it's really interesting. I think about the 5 a.m. club, which I've got no problem with, but it's often white men who are pushing a 5 a.m. club. And when you think about it, yes, you can do that, but because your wife is doing everything else, or the nanny, and and it's like, understand that for a lot of women, that's a big challenge. Or they're getting up at 5 a.m. because that's the only way they're going to be able to get everything that they need to do done, because the list is very long and they are at the bottom of the list. I think we also need to stop talking about work-life balance, because balance is difficult to find. It's really about blend, and that's more about how do we as women blend the things that we do. Do we go to the gym at lunchtime, for example? Do we leave a little bit earlier or come in a little bit later? Do we, how do we make the things we want to do so our lives aren't completely lost in the pursuit of working, and if we have children, looking after children? And I think there are more women going, I don't want kids, and I respect it. I'm like, good for you. Do it on your terms. And it's amazing how many people are like, oh, when are you going to have children, or why are you not going to have kids, and almost make them feel guilty for it. But actually, if you want to pursue a career, pursue it. I personally believe that you cannot do all of the things all of the time. It's impossible. I heard somebody say that, you can have all the things all the time, but you just need to change the percentages. I think even still, somewhere along the line, somebody loses out. Something loses out.
Something has to give.
Something has to give. And you have to decide on your terms what that is. And I think that that's the challenge for women. And I think also we're still dealing with patriarchy, we're still dealing with misogyny, whilst trying to build careers. It's very, very challenging. And then add the intersectionality of being of colour, being black or being Asian, that adds another dimension. You add disability, you add neurodiversity, you add LGBTQ+. It's like we are battling a lot of things, and then there's a lot of things that are happening currently where it seems that governments and people are trying to roll back the clock so that women's rights are being eroded. So I think what's the difference? The difference is that we kind of felt that we were going somewhere, and that's being pulled back on us. And yet the expectations in social media, especially, of being this perfect person, being able to do everything, I think that's a very, very oppressive challenge for women, because again, it's yet another thing to add to the to-do list. I now also need to be present on LinkedIn. I need to be present on social media. So I think that what's happened is, I think the pressures are far greater. It's not that we didn't have those pressures, but I think we didn't have pressures, but with our connected world, those pressures have definitely escalated.
What about authenticity? Obviously in the workplace and in the corporate environments, because some people are, as you said, pressurized into conforming or living lives not on their own terms, which can be very limiting. And one of the things that I know you do is to help people to break out of the cycle of, of limitation. How can somebody do this or live life on their own terms without coming across as being the angry black woman syndrome, or the being non-conformist, or being aggressive, or being seen to be too aggressive?
I think there's some slightly different elements in there. I think the most important thing for us is to spend time with ourselves. First, you've got to get to know who you are in order for you to choose what you... And I just believe that so many of us haven't been allowed to be who we are. We've been conditioned, it's a word you used earlier, we've been conditioned to operate on other people's terms, to make everybody else feel comfortable whilst we may be uncomfortable. I can speak openly, and last year I went through burnout, and I realised I didn't even recognise it, but I put myself in counselling, and I recognised there was a level of anxiety that I was living with, and it was my counsellor who made me say, it's anxiety. And I was almost like, I don't want to say that. And what I recognised was the reason why is because sometimes I wasn't speaking my own truths. I'm not talking about what I say on social media, just in my life. And in not speaking my own truths, I was pushing down what I really wanted to say. And in doing that, creating a level of anxiety. And so when we aren't authentically ourselves in situations because we're avoiding conflict, or we don't want people to think as being a particular way, we are pushing down who we really are, and sooner or later that shows up in the body. So for me, it's not about, I need to be big and brash. It's about spending time with yourself to work out, who am I? What do I really like? What do I enjoy? It's not about whether you're being aggressive or non-conformist. It's about you getting to know who you are. I like to call it aligning with yourself. We have been given so many different layers of other people's other people's stuff. We often don't even know who we are. And so actually we're showing up in the workplace not even as ourselves, and then in conflict with ourselves. So, and obviously if you're not sure about who you are, then how can you feel confident in that space? It's almost impossible, because you're in conflict. And so for me, this is the very first step. Get to know yourself. You get to know yourself by spending time with yourself. We're so busy rushing on to the next thing that we haven't even gone, hey, I did a great job there. Look at me. That's great. That's great. And so then when I step into my authenticity, my voice becomes, it's not about it being aggressive. It becomes stronger. It becomes more authentic. It becomes more real. And not only that, you start to recognize what works for you and what doesn't work for you. And I think many of us, if we're talking about black women, are operating sometimes in environments that just don't work for us, but we're going to keep with our head down because we've been told work twice as hard. In fact, this week I heard 5 times as hard. We've been told that if we work really hard and keep our heads down, then what will happen is you'll get recognised and you'll get promoted. Well, there's nothing further from the truth. And I know there are people who say, no, I worked really hard and that's how I'm not saying don't work hard, but you need to work smart. And so that might be about Who are the people that you need to be engaging with? Have you got a sponsor? Have you got a mentor? Have you got a coach? You look at successful white men, they've got mentors, they've got coaches for different things, and we're avoiding doing that because we don't want to pay the money. And it's like, but actually you have to invest in you to get where you want to go. You know, don't get me wrong, there are systemic issues, big time systemic issues. Believe me, I cannot tell you the amount of women of colour who are going through, and I say women of colour because it's Asian women as well as black women, certainly black women who are going through grievances, tribunals, having conversations without prejudice. But the more you get to know who you are and what you want, then actually you may recognise this isn't the place where I'm going to get it. And so actually you don't end up, you can not always avoid it because you're still dealing with other people's behaviour, but what you can do is then go, this isn't the right, I call it the right soil. Are you in the right soil for your development, so that they see you as what you bring to the table, as opposed to just through the lens of a stereotype because they ticked a box.
Madeline, what can you say to somebody who's been through a traumatic experience, maybe in the workplace, they've maybe taken on a job and not made probation, or maybe a high profile job, not made probation, and then there's a fallout from that, and it's a very public fallout, and how does somebody's gone through a very messy marital or relationship breakdown, quite a public one as well. How does somebody like that bounce back and basically realign themselves after such a traumatic experience?
Yeah, I think the first thing is we need to get rid of bounce back.
Okay.
I'm not saying all the time, because I think your ability to bounce back improves with the work that you do on yourself, right? So I can say I can have a traumatic experience and I'm going to bounce back quicker than I did before, but that's the work that I've done on myself. But I think for those situations, the first thing is to give yourself the space to grieve. I think we sometimes want to push people straight into get back out there, and sometimes get back out there may be the right thing, but give yourself some time to actually grieve what you've gone through, to process it, to look at it and go, what happened here? Where are my hurts? Where do I feel that I needed to do some different things? What's my responsibility? Because I think it's important to know what your responsibility is, but not take responsibility for what's not yours. And to differentiate between those two things, sometimes what we're doing is we're taking on other people's responsibility, and then it makes us feel even worse. So I'm going to split them between the job, the high profile job, and the relationship.
Okay.
The thing around the high profile jobs is you also need to control the narrative and be clear about what your narrative is. That doesn't mean to say you need to now share all the tea, go, you don't have to do that. But I think definitely getting really clear about what your narrative is. So recently, I don't know if you saw this, but India Ari decided that she was not going to do her tour. She cancelled it. And she actually put out a statement saying, this is what I plan to do. This is why I planned to do it. And she said, honestly, because I actually needed the money. And then what she said was, and I think this is a really good example, is these are my reasons why. I recognise that I'm struggling. I recognise that I'm not in the right mental space or physical space to do this. I want to give you my best. I'm unable to do it. And so I want you to know that I care for you. I love you. Obviously you're not going to say that in all situations. Yeah. I'm just using her example. I think you being able to and maybe working with somebody on this to control the narrative or control it as best as you can. To have your statement out there in the world, I think is very important. I think it's also very important to find your tribe or lean into your tribe. The people that you truly trust, the people that you know that will hold your hand through this, that will lift you up, that will support you. I think that's a very important thing to do. Also and this is why the grieving process is important, is to look at the context of what happened and then make your plans as to what's your next steps. Where do you want to go? Because these things happen all the time. And so it's important not to allow it to define you. It is an event. It is not who you are. And that separation is really important. Does that mean you may need a coach to help you work through that? You might need a counsellor to help you work through that, because that's how you're going to move on when you separate the event from you. So they're the things that I would say. I'm not a PR expert. But they're the things that I would say. And I think, again, with a relationship, having the time to grieve the relationship. You don't have to tell everybody your what, your where, and your why. You can ask for people to respect your privacy at this time, and that works for both scenarios. And I think the other thing is to take the time to do the work on you, because sometimes what happens is a high profile case and the next thing you're straight into another relationship. Actually, you haven't worked out you haven't allowed yourself to grieve. You haven't allowed yourself to work out what do you want in a relationship, and then how do you want to behave in a relationship, and how do you want that other person to behave towards you. Having those really clear makes a really big difference to how you experience a relationship going forward. But most importantly is to protect yourself and protect your heart. It's not about everybody else. It's about you, because they're not going through it. They can all talk on it, but it's not their experience, it's yours.
Wow, that's very insightful. Madeline, what about what motivates you? What gets you out of bed in the morning? Are you a morning person or not morning person?
I'm a perimenopausal person. It depends on how I feel waking up. To be fair, my brain definitely kicks on about 4:00 in the afternoon, and I could work most of the evening and maybe into the night. I have to stop myself doing that. What motivates me? Lightbulb moments. I love it when the light bulb goes on, they see their own brilliance, they see their own magnificence, they see their greatness, they see what they've done, how they've done it, and that means something, and they can use that to go further. I like it when I like to see people light up, because they've connected with who they really are. They've aligned themselves as such, and they found their backbone of steel. That gets me up in the morning, and I want to always share honestly and share practically. I'm a practical, logical person. That is the way my brain works. I'm going to have looked at something and already put all the things together, and so I see potential. And so when people realise their own potential, that gets me up in the morning to help them be able to do that.
I know you have an event coming up.
I do indeed.
Tell us about it.
So it's called the Brilliant Summit. My husband always mocks me because I can never say brilliant. I always have a bit of a bruh with my brilliance. And I decided, I've been wanting to do a conference for a while, but I was like, okay, I want to do it when I want to do it. And when I say a while, I'm talking about years. It was always in my plan that I would do it. And I really truly want women, especially, don't get me wrong, I get some male clients ever so often, but I truly want women to recognise that it's not enough just to have the professional qualifications. It's not enough to work hard. It's not enough to sit in hope. Women sitting for 15 years in an organisation, maybe it's got 4 roles, but not 4 roles money. And I really just wanted them to have a space where we moved from inspiration. We can find inspiration all over the place, and it's not that they won't be inspired, but really move towards action. So this is a how-to conference. I've curated amazing, I'm so grateful for the women in my network, amazing women, and it's a how-to conference. So there's always going to be a notebook if you do something with me, and that's because it's important to write things down. And I want people to come away with the startings of a plan for their next steps. And I say their next steps because it can't be my next step for them. It's got to be their own. I want them to come away having met fabulous people, and now having that cross-pollination across industries, across roles, across modalities, so that they can really meet new people, so that when you are in a room, and it's a multicultural event on purpose, because we as women need to learn to work together really well. So my pillars are basically, it's personal development, it's career development, it's social mobility, it's earning your own power, and it's allyship and intersectionality, and underpinned by networking. And the reason why is because we need to take back control. Of course, patriarchy. However, we are almost 50% of the world's population, and we have power, and so it's important for us then to be able to use our collective power, but also recognise our individual power as well. That's what this conference is about. So, CEO of Saatchi & Saatchi, who's an ex-client of mine, she's going to be speaking. The City CV and Hanover, Victoria McQueen, who are known for executive CVs and teaching us how to do that. People like Vanessa Villali, We Are the City, Lady Phil, UK Black Pride, Shazia Gyani, Simo of Bliss, people like Sophie Devonshire from the Marketing Society, I'm trying to think, Remy Ray, the Diverse Creative, Lan Fan, who's coming all the way from the States, Community of Seven, and more, Tamara Gillen, Wealthy Her. We're going to be talking about career development. We're going to be talking about CVs. We're going to be talking about wealth and how we own it, keep it. On neurodiversity, I'll be talking about how to own your power, your value, and your worth. We're going to be talking about how to find your tribe, dealing with difficult situations, finding your oxygen, and how to live a life you love. And our very last panel with... God, I need to make sure I get all the names in. Rasheen, so there was not the last one. Rasheen Ngori Rima is going to be there. Brenda Romanis is going to host one of the panels. Lorna Mattis, who's senior, she's the senior director for talent at Netflix. She's going to be there. I've literally curated these amazing women. And our last panel is how to leave with grace and not fear. Because sometimes we don't leave because we're fearful, and think because we don't know what's on the other side, because we haven't been interviewing. We've kept ourselves isolated in our small C career in the organisation, rather than thinking about our capital C career, which is our life career. And so this is about our how-tos of changing those things so that we can be prosperous, so that we can be powerful, so that we can have the permission to live the life that we are capable of leading. But also, even if you've got here, you can take it to there. And that's really what I want these women to come away with. So we have, it starts at 8:45 is our registration. 9:30 we get going. We have lunch, and lunch is provided. We run till the end of the day. And then we have a networking soiree in the evening, so that you can get to meet all of those people. What I've also done is we have an app called it's Magnificently You, so it's the Brilliant Summer app, and basically you can literally, when you buy your ticket, start networking with people now.
Okay.
And with sort of just in the process of securing another sponsor, which is, we don't have a lot of sponsors, but it's okay. So I've bootstrapped this conference, which is Hargreaves Lansdown, and Micah from Hargreaves Lansdown is going to actually be there speaking with Tamara Gillen. And then we also have within the app, we have an 11 episode podcast with more great, fantastic, amazing women talking about a lot of things that we didn't feel that we could on the day. So we didn't want to stuff the day with too much and people come away so overwhelmed that they don't take away as much information as we'd like them to. What we've done is we've given the day a reasonable amount of time, and everyone's got a reasonable amount of time, and then the podcast sits in the app, so you can watch those podcasts, which are about 45 minutes.
In your own time.
In your own time.
Great. Madeline, one thing that you just touched on, which I'll let you talk about very quickly before we round up, is finding your oxygen.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about that.
So Esther is going to be talking about this, and this is about finding really what often happens, I think, for us as we hold our breath. We don't breathe enough. And sometimes we are then in our work, we don't breathe. You know, we're holding our breath, and actually we need oxygen to move ourselves forward. And that oxygen might be people, it might be learning, it might be support, but it's like, where do you find the things? It might be journaling, it might be meditation, finding quiet time for yourself that can fill. What are the things that fill you back up? So if you think about how we work with nature, you know, we've got a tree here, you know, what do trees give out? I always get this wrong. CO...
carbon
dioxide, not monoxide, because if they're giving that monoxide, we're going to carbon monoxide, right? So they carbon dioxide, carbon dioxide. What do we breathe in? We breathe in oxygen, right? But we breathe. Sorry, they give out oxygen. We breathe out carbon dioxide. They take it in, clean it out, give us back oxygen. We need people around us. We need situations. We need things around us that give us our oxygen, where we are able to let go of the things that we shouldn't be holding within our bodies, shouldn't be holding within our careers, and actually fill ourselves back up. And so that's what that's about, finding your oxygen that's going to help you take that deep breath in, support all of your being, and move you to your next level.
Fantastic.
So the conference is on the 27th of June. It's at the De Vere Connaught Rooms, and it is www.thebrilliancesummit.com, and tickets prices are going up shortly. So if you want to get your price, you can get it in now.
Definitely. We have a tradition of this podcast where we give our guests the opportunity to dedicate the episodes that they feature on to anyone or any group of people of their choice. So who would you like to dedicate this episode to? And you can look to the camera for that.
So is it just has to be one or
no.
one? Okay.
Well, as long as it's not 100 people.
No, it's not. Okay, so firstly I'd like to dedicate it to my family, actually. I'd like to dedicate it to my mum, my dad, and my sisters. We're all different people, but we're all very, very strong. Both of my parents have passed, so I'm going to dedicate this to my sisters, and then I'm going to dedicate it also to the wonderful members of the Compass Club. So I run a club for Black women in leadership, Black and Black mixed heritage women, and again, it's a place where they find their oxygen, right? And so those women are phenomenal. They are outstanding, but what I love about them is that they firstly chose to invest in themselves because they deemed themselves worthy enough, and secondly, they invest in themselves. So they financially invested in themselves, and then each day they invest in themselves as they do the work in the club of taking themselves to their next level. So I dedicate this episode to them as well.
Fantastic. And I would like to dedicate this to David McQueen as well.
He's always getting in there.
That's me being cheeky.
Very cheeky.
Yeah. Madeline, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
And I can't wait for this episode to come out, because I think that you embody what we're trying to do on this podcast.
Thank you.
You know, I see the impact that you're making in the lives of not just women, but just in the community, and helping people to discover themselves, be the best version of themselves, you know, and to find their oxygen.
Love that.
Thank you very much.
No, thank you for having me.
And if you've enjoyed this episode, I'd like you to like, comment, share, and subscribe. And see you next week. Done.
Thank you.
Thank you.